Hey, thanks for coming back. That was quick. um, my name is Jill, and I am reading excerpts from my book called Free Will. Is it upside down? It's upside down. Um, and I'm reading one or two chapters at a time. And if you want to start from the beginning, you can look at my channel or look at the links down below, and you'll be able to find the preface and the first few chapters. Um, so when the last time we left off at the end of chapter 17, things were getting a little intense with my old best friend. We had a little bit of a hookup. And so now things are going to get even more intense. So let's jump into chapter 18. The next couple days we spoke on the phone. He sent me an enormous bouquet of flowers at work, an inside joke written on the card. He asked to see me again. The next night we went to hang out in Laguna Beach. We walked around Laguna and talked while we window shopped. We strolled past a bar where a band was playing loudly. I suddenly realized it was a place that many of my JW friends hung out on the weekends. I spotted a couple of them from outside the window. I grabbed his arm, pulled him in the opposite direction so as not to be seen with this married man, and we ran down the boardwalk and onto the beach. We went down on the sand and shared a blanket while we watched the sunset. This was escalating fast, and it was only the second time we'd gotten together. That night, he told me his wife was going to find out that we'd seen each other if she hadn't already. I said, okay, good, let's move in together. I really kind of said it as a joke. Both of us were raised as these really goody two-shoes Christians. His family was especially strict in the church. Living together was a sin. Adultery was a sin. Divorce was a sin. We would be kicked out of the church. We made plans for the following weekend to go to San Diego together so we could discuss our future. This was it. The 24-year-old virgin was diving in. The first night we spent together, we were in a hotel in San Diego. This was a huge deal for both of us. I was the 24-year-old virgin and he was married. Yes, his marriage had been on the rocks apparently since the beginning, but 7 years in, things were not good at all according to his telling of it. But still, he didn't really drink then. I, however, was a nervous wreck, knowing what was going to happen that night. I drank almost a whole bottle of wine before this serious action commenced. Growing up in the very strict environment I had very little prep for what sex would be like. I knew what should happen, but I couldn't even conceive of how it would transpire. My go-to image of how sex should look was taken from a scene in The Big Chill when Kevin Kline and Mary Kay Place are trying to make a baby, lying on one another, face to face, gently rocking. That and random other movie scenes where the camera shot is of two lovers' intertwined hands as their arms are stretched out with vigor. Other than that, I had no picture of how it was going to play out. When I was about 19, I lived with two good friends and we had a lower unit apartment. The people who lived upstairs were going at it, and I asked my roomies, what are they doing up there all the time? It's like they're jump roping. My roommates, being older and wiser than me, laughed their asses off at my naivete. Anyway, that night in San Diego went fine. All systems were go, excepting the fact that we couldn't actually 100% do it. The best way I could describe my feeling during trying to do it would be, it was like trying to put a watermelon in a nostril. I was fired up and ready, but I kept climbing up the headboard on my back because of the pain. Not being quitters, eventually we got her done. He was a kind, unselfish lover and always made sure I got my cookies before him. So gentle, patient, and skilled. We were on the same page and seemed to read each other's minds in that venue. I was so grateful that my first time was with someone so thoughtful and kind. A little juicy. Not too bad. Okay, chapter 19. We moved in together about 3 weeks after that first date. Crazy, right? We were isolated because of being disfellowshipped. Yep, I was kicked out of the church, just like my dad was when I was a kid. This meant that our friends and family in the church were not to speak to us. But when you're in the throes of passion and are finally able to be with the best friend you ever had, you don't really notice anybody around you anyway. That first year was full of sex, laughter, and music. We'd stay up till 3 in the morning talking about everything and playing songs for each other. Our relationship was more friendship than anything, which made it easy for us to be together 24/7. We just always enjoyed each other's company. Whether working, playing tennis, or golf, we were having a blast. But I'm not going to lie, the sex was epic. He should teach courses. On second thought, maybe I should. Just kidding. It is so vivid, the moment of being with him for our first time in our own apartment. I remember feeling so connected, almost like I was whole for the first time. We were on the couch in our living room. He lay on top of me, closer than I'd ever been to another human. Just like in The Big Chill, he rocked gently. Tears of peace and joy came to me as I stared up at the wood-paneled vaulted ceiling. It was otherworldly, like being in a different dimension. I was so happy, happier than I'd been in years. I hung a hammock on the deck and I spent most of my time at home rocking in that while reading thick novels or Rolling Stone or Playboy magazine. I had gotten him a subscription to Playboy as a gift. I was not the jealous type at all. I was secure about him enjoying the beauty of women. I thought it was great for him to have the freedom to look at Playboy now that he wasn't in the church. Plus, I got a bit of a sex education from reading it. I know, but I had a lot of catching up to do. The two of us knew how to have fun, and being together all the time, we thrived. We laughed so much. There are not many things that bring me greater happiness than making someone I love laugh. And he laughed all the time. We just got each other, like two puzzle pieces that fit perfectly. We played seamlessly. Music was our language, but now instead of 8 tracks or records or cassettes, we collected CDs. We had a CD collection that filled an entire wall of our condo. Music played in our home and in the car incessantly. We went to concerts every weekend. Simply Red, 10,000 Maniacs, Depeche Mode, The Fix, Peter Murphy, etc., etc. It was the 90s. And of course, we saw Jethro Tull about 1,000 times. We played tennis a couple times a week and golfed every week too. When we'd play tennis, we'd set up speakers on the court and blast our favorite tunes while we played. We had so many jokes between us. They became multi-layered jokes on jokes that nobody around us would have understood without hours of explanation. Being with him was the easiest way to be. We agreed on everything. Everything except peas. I'll never forget our first shopping trip to the grocery store together. We filled our basket with chips and dip, pasta, French bread, coffee, and wine. As I picked out a couple of pints of Ben & Jerry's and turned to load them in the cart, my eyes shuddered at what I saw. Peas? What are peas doing in our cart? He said he loved peas. Okay, there was something we didn't agree on. He always had a nickname for me. Many actually. Birds, short for lovebird. Lidge, Jill backwards. Or Low or Low Rider, derived from Lorraine, my middle name. He called me these names so much that my friends and even my nieces and nephews would eventually call me by them. I love the gentle way he spoke those names to me. They call them endearments. I really miss those. We lived together for about a year and a half. It took a long time for his divorce to settle. He took me to the beach house restaurant in Laguna to propose. The times being what they were, I wore a purple dyed denim mini dress with a strategically placed cutout exposing my tanned midriff and crimped my long blonde hair for the special occasion. It was a spectacular sunset with the sound of the tide crashing next to us and deep love permeating the air. As soon as we could, we married in a simple ceremony on the beach in San Diego. We honeymooned on a cruise ship to Mexico. It was the cheapest cruise that we could find because we didn't have a ton of money. Not knowing what we were doing when we booked it, we ended up in a room on a level as far to the bottom of the ship as you can get. I'm sure we were right next to housekeeping and laundry. We had 2 twin beds bolted to the walls. There was no porthole because I think our view would have been underwater. When the lights were out any time of the day, it was so dark you couldn't even see your hand in front of your face. Even with these less than stellar accommodations, it was a week of heaven. We had so much fun. We toured Cabo, Mazatlan, and Puerto Vallarta. We played tennis by the sea, went sailing, parasailing, lounged in the sun, and made love in the blackness on a twin bed. We got lost one afternoon in Mazatlan after a taxi dropped us off in no man's land. We walked and talked for hours, wondering if we'd ever find our way back to the ship. We had been wandering for so long, I was starting to get nervous. Everything was looking strange and scary. No one we saw spoke English. The neighborhood was getting seedier, and I was hanging on to my husband tight. As we crossed the street, hoping to find help, we saw a tiny, shriveled-faced old woman dressed entirely in black, even donning a black shawl over her head. She was walking toward us to cross the street. As we grew near her, I clutched my husband's arm even tighter. We were almost past her when suddenly she jumped with both feet right in front of me and yelled loudly at my face, "Ah!" I jumped out of my skin. Just then, she started laughing hysterically and kept walking by. Just some crazy-ass witch lady getting her kicks, scaring the shit out of the tourist. We were in shock and then burst out laughing, me stopping to cross my legs to keep from peeing my pants. We made our way back to the ship eventually. What a fun trip to kick off our marriage. So there we are. The beginning of a very long-lasting marriage, a beautiful friendship and a relationship that went for a very, very long time. And you're going to find out a lot more about that. So let's see, I think we're going to do one more chapter before we move on. So let's go on to chapter 19. Okay, there was something I was going to say with regard to that chapter. Oh, well, maybe it'll come to me by the end. Okay, chapter 20. As a married couple, we were free to work our way back into the church. This entailed attending 5 meetings a week at the Kingdom Hall without being spoken to or acknowledged by anyone for months. Then we would need to go before a committee of elders numerous times to express solemn regret for breaking of any of God's laws, more accurately, Jehovah's Witness laws. We had to repent, pour our heart out, and wait patiently for months while these 3 men on the committee decided our fate. Not for the faint of heart. These committees can be uncomfortable at best, a miserable interrogation and dismantling of your character at worst. It depended on if you got decent elders or egomaniacal, power-hungry types. I experienced much of the latter. I almost jumped ship a few times on the basis of these interrogations. In spite of this, we did our due diligence to come back because we both still thought the JWs had the truth. We worried about our fate and future and wanted to get right with God. Sure, we enjoyed our year and a half of being outside the church only because we wanted to be together and we were having a great time. But we were determined to put things right and be back in our family's good graces. As we waited and worked our way back into the church, we would fantasize about how great it would be to share our fun lives with all our family and friends one day. My husband would say my husband would call it talking about the rabbits. He would do the cartoon voice of Lenny of Mice and Men and say, "Tell me about the rabbits, George." Sorry, I can't do the voice. Then we'd both imagine how great it would be to be back in the church, surrounded by friends and family once again, and with community back in our lives. How everyone would see how much we loved each other and would realize we were meant to be together. This was great in theory, but the reality is when you come back in the church after being disfellowshipped, it is not all sunshine and roses. Many of our friends and family were truly thrilled to have us back. But there is a stigma attached to someone who has the audacity to leave, even if only temporarily. The church might reinstate you, but some individuals still treated us as if we were damaged goods. This was something that I had taken notice of even when I was a young kid. The JW Church can be a breeding ground for self-righteousness, superciliousness, that is elitist and cold. I worked hard to overlook this. To be honest, most of it came from certain ones in my husband's family. Some of my new in-laws. From my perspective, they were an uptight bunch that didn't cut anybody any slack. In their eyes, we were the black sheep section of the family, and honestly, that never really changed. I have to say here that I tried really hard to be accepted by his family. I eventually had a fairly decent relationship with his mom. Although we were very different people, we shared a mutual respect for each other and I grew to care about her. His sister eventually became one of my best friends. Personality-wise, she was the female version of my husband, so we could share laughter together till our bellies ached. I really miss her. But the long, humiliating endeavor to get reinstated into the JW Church required the willingness to put your tail between your legs with shame and carry that burden of disgrace well after you were officially reinstated. We did it, though. For my own part, the shame stuck to me like a jujube in a molar. I tried to feel good enough, but could never shake the feeling of being on the B team, always a bit less than in this exclusionary cult. So, a couple of things I want to say there. One of the very worst things that ever happened to me in the organization happened when we were getting reinstated. I got reinstated a lot faster than my ex-husband did because he was married and he lived in a place where there was really strict elders. Mine were kind of pretty cool, you know. It was I think 6 months after we had gotten married, they reinstated me. And my elders told me in their kind reasonableness, they told me they thought it would be a really good idea if I went with him to his old congregation committee meeting, because they said that my committee said, the brothers will see how much in love you guys are and how wonderful and happy you are, and that will bode well for him getting reinstated. So I did this. I went with him for, one of his first committee meetings after his request to come back. And they brought me in the room with him. So here's the three brothers. My husband's sitting next to me. I'm sitting here. And one of the brothers, the other two were quite shy and quiet. One I had known since I was a very little kid, and he knew my family, he knew my parents. He pretty much knew, back in the day when my dad was an elder, ours was a family. I had an uncle who was a circuit overseer that everybody knew. So when my dad left and got disfellowship, it was a big deal that everybody talked about, and he remembered it. Then he remembered my mom married a worldly man, and he remembered my sister left being a witness. He chose this moment. Oh, and this is the other part of this story. The night before this committee meeting was the announcement of my reinstatement. So I was reinstated. I was celebrating the night before, so happy, and I was thinking the same thing was going to happen for him. And I'm sitting there in this old Kingdom Hall that I used to go to, and this psycho dude just went off on me. I mean, he tore me up. I mean, basically just badmouthed my entire family. Is your dad still disfellowshipped? Is this happening? Has your sister ever come back in the truth? Did this ever happen? I mean, he just belittled me and humiliated me to the point that I was sitting there crying the night after I got reinstated. And basically indicated that I had planned this whole thing, like as a, 15, 14-year-old or whatever, that I had planned this thing, that me and Dave, oh, shoot, now I'm going to have to edit this, that we somehow planned this when we were teenagers, and that he was going to get a divorce after a few years and marry me. Yeah. Who wanted to do that? It was ridiculous. And I mean, I literally thought, he's lost his mind. I mean, he is not, and he's in charge of this. And my husband's, verdict hung in the balance. Well, they put him through it. They made him wait and wait and wait and wait. I'm not sure how long it took, but it was like somewhere between 6 months and a year after I got reinstated for him to get reinstated. It was crazy. I mean, that night when I had that experience, I mean, it just makes you question, okay, this is God's organization. These men are appointed by Holy Spirit, and this person is being so cruel. And I mean, it hurts so bad when people criticize your family. It's just awful. And for him to be doing that, it was mind-boggling. It was so harsh and cruel. And the reality was, it was far from the first time I had seen that kind of stuff go on. So it was just another nail in the coffin. So anyway, sorry, that was kind of depressing, but that's kind of one of the things about my story. I just did not want to cover up some of the ugly things that I had seen transpire in my JW career. All the years that I was in, 46 years I was in the organization. And sometimes I'll have people say, oh, you were so brave to write a book about it. Oh, I can't believe you put yourself out there. And the thing is, what option do they give us? They can take away your most valued thing, your relationship with your loved ones. And they've done that for me. It worked. Their plan worked. And they took away so much of my family and my friends. So I have nothing to lose. Who cares if I write a book? Who cares if I tell the truth? So I'm not going to pretend or act like, the organization is better. And at the same time, I do want to say, there was a bunch of really cool elders that really were trying the best. I mean, I've seen some ex JW elders, that have left now, and nice guys, and they didn't like what they were doing a lot of the time. And I knew a lot of really cool elders like that. So I'm not saying they're all bad guys, but you definitely can get a bad bunch sometimes. And I've heard some horror stories, a lot worse than my own. I know you guys have too. But anyway, just makes us happier that we're not there, right? And we don't have to go to a committee to talk about our personal life anymore. Anyway, thank you so much for continuing to stay with the story. I hope you come back for the next one, and I will see you soon. Take care.